Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Adam and Joel for another episode. You know what? I don't know what this episode is because we don't know if we're doing any particular category of discussion, but we're going to talk about the Kung Fu Craze today. We're going to talk about King Boxer. King Boxer is the 1972 film that basically instigated the Kung Fu Craze in North America. It's not the first Kung Fu movie, but it's the one that really helped get the ball rolling, or so many people say. And it stars Lolier. It's got all of the basic elements of a Kung Fu Craze film, with the good school and the evil school and a tournament, but a lot more going on in between, and even like a pretty well constructed love triangle, I would say. It's notable too because the audio for when the technique that the main character uses is triggered is an audio sample that they used in the Kill Bill movies. It's that like siren wailing type sound. So it's a very classic film. I don't know, do we need to give the breakdown of the plot, or do you think that was sufficient for the purposes of our discussion?
I mean, that was the breakdown of the plot. It's super straightforward plot.
So I don't know. What did you guys think of this movie? Because it's been a while since I've seen it. So I watched it again last night, and I tried to watch it last week, and I ended up having disputes with my wife over the volume. So it was good that I was able to watch it last night.
That Kill Bill siren wail sound can get pretty annoying, and it crops up infrequently, but often enough that it can really put a spike in the old audio. So I liked this movie a lot. I was surprised. It is really just kind of what it is. It's I think it's like you said, it's like the originator of the Kung Fu Craze, more or less. And so this is a good school that they're just good guys. There's nothing really complicated about them. There's a bad guy school that are just the worst kind of bastards. And that's almost that's like the driving force of the movie. If I had to say what it's about, there it is. It's so straightforward. You almost feel like you're leaving something out when you describe the plot. No, there it is. But it's great. It's great because and me and Adam were talking about this whenever you dipped out for a little bit earlier, Brendan. The movie's so efficient. Every 5 minutes of this film is like an entire arc of something. It's and it's not rushed. It's beautifully balanced. So every 5 minutes you either have a new interesting plot element added in, you have one considerably moved along, you have one complicated, or you have one resolved. So every picosecond of this movie is necessary viewing. There's no fat on it. It doesn't feel rushed. It's marvelously complete. So
it's very. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was completely. I was absorbed in this movie, is what I'd say. I couldn't take my eyes off it.
One thing I was paying attention to this time is there's this movie has to achieve a lot, because a lot of movies would start with this guy already being in the school. Do you know what I mean? So they don't have to deal with you sort of going on the journey of him entering the school, then becoming a top student, and blah, blah, blah. This movie starts from square one, where he is sent by his master to join the school. And it's very interesting how, like you said, it efficiently uses its time so that everything feels like, this is the believable moment for him to now be handed this manual. This is the believable moment for this to happen. So by the time all of the really crazy stuff starts to crescendo, you believe the characters are where they're at, and doesn't feel like there's been an exposition bomb dropped on you or anything. And I thought that was really interesting, just because, again, it doesn't start with him as a student in the school itself, which would have shaved off a lot of the, need for that. And that they were still able to build up all that and have all of the, because again, it is a very simple movie, but it actually has a lot of scenes, a lot of important twists and turns, a lot of different characters trying to do different things. So you have him and Ying Ying, the love interest. You have him building up towards the tournament at the end, but you also have the jealous rival at his own school who goes on his own crazy journey by the end. And then
of course, by having him ride with the school later and join, it makes him this interloper. The jealous guy was the top student, and now he's pissed that this new guy has come along. So that's another reason that works very well.
It all interlocks, and that also interlocks with the singer story. I can't remember her name, but was it Jan, was that the name of the singer?
Yeah, Jan's
yeah. He meets the singer, and then this love triangle develops between him and Ying Ying, kind of. But also the jealous rival is jealous of Jan as well.
Yeah.
And then she reconnects with him by the end in this really interesting, like, I almost find what happens with him and Jan a little bit more interesting than what happens with Lolier at the climax of the movie, because they have a really cool fight scene where he's blind and she's directing him. And I don't know, I just really enjoyed that.
It's really wonderfully grim and just gritty and great. Because when Zhao Zhihao shows up with his iron palm or whatever it is and just lays waste to everybody, that's a satisfying scene, but it's not gritty. It's just it's a complete beat down. Yeah.
And they do, I mean, like, one of the things I do like about his character, number one, Lolier, it's really interesting watching Shaw Brothers movies over time, because if you start like in the mid 60s, where Lolier is just starting out in movies like Golden Swallow and stuff like that, he looks a certain way, but then by this point he's developed a lot more, and you get to see him becoming more of the character actor that he'd be. He's good at playing villains, that kind of thing. And in this movie, I think he brings that perfect balance of like being a good protagonist who you want to like, but there's this brooding quality to him that it's not like in the dialogue so much. I mean, there's elements of it in the dialogue, but it's just kind of present in his expressions and things like that, where I don't know, it makes him more interesting. He's not he's not like the simple vanilla hero that he might look like on paper if you show somebody the script, if that makes sense.
Well, Lola's performance here is really impressive, because he develops a character, and early on he's pretty straightforward, but it's always clear that he has this internal life that he doesn't quite share with anyone. There's something going on below the surface, and there's cogs and wheels moving down there. And whenever he gets his hands broken, like halfway through the movie or so, that it gets externalized.
Yes.
And suddenly all of his emotions are just everywhere, and he's explosive, and he's lashing out at that singer. And it's great. It's so damn good. Yeah. I do wish they'd spend a little more time on his recovery, because basically as soon as he makes up his mind to recover, he's better.
Yeah. Well, you know what it is? That's the efficiency, because if they didn't, because it's very one-armed swordsman-like, where he's nursed back to health by a woman. And I think the crucial thing about that recovery is, number one, him going through this process of, oh no, I'll never fight again. But also he's making a decision about Yan or Yin Yang during that moment too, because there's also that part of the conversation that his friend has with him when he finds him. So I don't know. I'm kind of with you. I think it could be longer, but at the same time, the movie's an hour and 37 minutes, so it's probably
it's super efficient.
Yeah, so. I feel like if they extended that, there'd be this draggy middle that might have occurred. But
it would have. You could do that, or you could have done the thing where he has there's something about his recovery that left him with some weakness that could be exploited. That would have been good to see. It would have added a little more tension to the last part of the movie, where he's just crushing everyone with the iron fist. There was no tension in that for me. I knew he was going to kill everybody.
I would say when he's dealing with the samurai, not the samurai, the Japanese judo instructor who's using the katana. I think that scene felt a little bit dangerous to me. The scene when he's fighting the bad guy from the other school, that felt fairly. Yeah.
Well, the guy actually kills himself instead of fighting him. So give you an idea.
That was interesting, though, wasn't it?
That was
I think this movie made a lot of interesting decisions, because you expect when they go back to the school, so there's a tournament, and at the tournament, what's his name? Tian Feng, the actor, who's he playing? Meng Sanye, is that the name of the character?
Yeah, Meng Sanye.
And he's a great actor. He played Li Khan in The Fatal Li Khan. He's been in a lot of movies where he plays these kind of characters. But here he's truly villainous, and he stabs the rival master when he's going to congratulate him after the tournament.
What a bastard.
But what's good is you expect the next scene to be Lolier showing up to get revenge. And instead it's the blind guy who's like the Judas character being direct. And it's a clever twist, because it's not like this complete 180, but it's just not what you're expecting. And then when Lolier does show up, the guy just kills himself and kind of takes the vengeance, the ability for him to get revenge away. So I don't know. I find all of those decisions interesting, and then the real final battles with the judo instructor. I think he was a judo instructor.
You call him a head assassin too, because he was kind of in charge of what were effectively assassins.
Yeah, they were like the evil school recruits these Japanese guys to come and kill on their behalf effectively, or at least to maim their enemies and blind them. They're pretty ferocious. But yeah, I don't know. I thought that it made a lot of interesting decisions, and also cinematically, I think it made a lot of cool choices. You see this in some other movies, but something about the way it's done in this film, where every once in a while, like most of the fights, when the guys are sort of charging at each other, it's done at an angle, so it's POV, but in an angle, right? And every once in a while, there's one that's coming straight at the viewer. Do you know what I mean? Like some guys, punching or kicking, and it's coming right at you, but it's really fast. It's not like a very long shot. And I found the way that it would use that, and that it would kind of create a rhythm with them, where sometimes it would do that more intensely in faster sequence, was I don't know, it just made you feel like you were being attacked, but you didn't know why, because it was so quick. So I really liked the way that the film was shot too.
Yeah, the cinematography on this one is on point. It's never intrusive, and sometimes it's really remarkable, like you're talking about. Mm-hmm. It does a good job of transporting you into the middle of a dangerous situation, so I like that. I don't have much to say for it beyond that, but it does do a really good job of it. I think that sometimes the best kind of cinematography is the one where you don't comment on it because it's feeding you information so efficiently that it doesn't call attention to itself. And this is that. Like, again, there's just such a beautiful efficiency to the way this movie's put together.
Yeah, the director, I think his name is Chang Ho, and I don't think he's someone that you don't hear him mentioned as much as like Chang and stuff like that. But he's got a couple of other movies that he's done that I really like. Broken Oath is kind of like a Chinese remake of Lady Snowblood almost, but with Angela Mao. It's really good. It's not done in the way that Lady Snowblood is done, but it's that same basic sort of premise, but with Angela Mao. So it's a very interesting film. And the other one that I really liked that he did was Heads for Sale, which I haven't seen in ages, but it was a very fun movie.
Usually when you find some wacky movie like that and show it to me, it becomes my new favorite thing. Chinese Ghost Story did that.
Well, Heads for Sale, I saw the title and I was like, I have to see this movie. Like some movies, that's just the way it is. But yeah, I thought it was well shot. But I don't know, something about those shots where it's coming right at you. And again, I don't know anything about film editing, so I don't know the language to use, but the duration of those shots really was impactful on me. Because it kind of took me a second to realize why I was getting defensive every time, like whenever those would happen, I'd feel defensive. It was like it was provoking me. But yeah, so I don't know what other things about the movie did you guys notice?
I really like how restrained they were with the super martial arts techniques. Like it's like 99% just train hard and learn the forms and fight like a normal, like insane person. And that 1% that the super punch, I want to call it the Iron Fist. Like,
I think in the version I saw, it was called the Iron Fist, but I think I've seen different versions where it's got different names. So I don't know what the official. Adam, in the booklet that you got, what did they call the technique? Did they give
what's our official name for the Iron Fist technique?
The Iron Fist,
because it's more of a palm technique, right?
Iron Palm was what they called it in the subtitles, but I'll check.
On the one I saw, it was Iron Fist, I think.
Yeah, I think because I watched the dubbed version of all things.
Yeah, that's what.
And I think they said Iron Fist there too, and I think probably it is actually Iron Palm.
And I know that some versions of this movie are called like Five Fingers of Death or something like that.
Yeah.
Five Fingers of Death. So, and I guess
the synopsis doesn't name it, but
I guess that the literal translation of the title is number one fist in the world. I don't know if that relates to the technique at all, though.
That could just be about being the punchiest of all punchers.
Well, because it's a tournament, right? So he's trying to become so
maybe it's a double entendre. Chinese does that a lot. Like of all languages I've ever encountered, Chinese is the one that's like the best slash worst for like layering in, like, I don't even want to call them puns. They're kind of like meaning and references. Chinese
Well,
is
one thing
awesome
I know
for that.
they can do that we can't is because it's a tonal language. They can have words that have the same sound but different tones, and that can create like a pun effect that you wouldn't be able to
Yeah,
do in English.
yeah. In
Um,
Japanese, sometimes you hold a vowel for a different length, so it's like okashi and okashi, or it's like or candy
okay,
and crazy. So you can do like puns on that and
Oh,
stuff.
that's
okay,
great.
Yeah,
but yeah, but I don't know about that stuff. But I know that like I know what you're saying, that like the one of the cool things about this story is the main character is instructed to not use the technique unless it's like a life or death situation. So at the
Yeah,
main tournament, we get the siren, the sound effect of him. Every time he uses the technique, they give that sound, and his hands kind of glow, like they get like
yeah,
a
like
red,
glow red.
bloody
Yeah, it's
look.
cool.
Yeah,
hmm
it's a really interesting, and also I like that kind of foreshadows what happens to his hands midway through the movie too, because
Mhm.
he keeps getting these flashes of red on his hands, and then his hands end up getting smashed by the bad guys. But he's given this instruction to not use it unless it's like life and death. And so even though he starts to do the stance and you get the sound effect during the tournament, he doesn't use it. And you almost think by the end of the movie, oh, we're never going to see him really use this the way that it's meant to be. There's like, one fight scene midway through, but he's not at his apex then. So it's not
Mhm.
quite, you want to see him in his full glory. And you're even led to believe that it's not going to happen because the
Oh
main
yeah.
bad guy kills himself, and you don't realize that the judo guy is going to show up because you don't know the result of that fight between him and the other guy. So they just do a good job of, I don't know, like laying all these pieces in place, and you know,
Yeah, they make you wait for the payoff with that fist.
yeah,
But I like that it's, instead of it being just the payoff, they give you the payoff eventually. But instead of it just being the payoff, they tease it and they make it part of his character to know the Iron Fist. Like he learns it because he's morally responsible enough to use it when it's the right time. And even though he's tempted to use it to win the tournament, he doesn't. He wins the tournament
yeah.
legitimately without resorting to his super move. It's great, you know. This Man, I don't want to compare everything to Star Wars, but that's a kind of a Star Warsy moment.
yeah,
It's attempted to use the dark side, but I like that.
Well, I
It's Star
also
Wars. If Star Wars made sense.
one thing I really do like about this movie is the way they emphasize character and martial arts, and how the head instructor, the way that he tests his character is he kind of humiliates him in the beginning by giving him all these menial tasks, and he does a vaguely Miyagi type thing where it's like,
This is 100% Miyagi.
yeah, he's kind of training him while he's doing these things. He's throwing things at him. He's giving him tasks that relate to what he needs to learn.
That does kind of
But
give it away, though. The second he's like, "Hey, heads up," and
yeah,
throws like
yeah.
that beam of wood at him, and he's like, "What?"
I don't know. Maybe he just hated him. Maybe he's just like, hey, I don't like you. I'm going to pelt you with this spear
I'm gonna
tip.
pelt you.
Yeah.
Not today, buddy.
but once again, that this goes back to this being just like the perfect meat and potatoes version of a kung fu movie in a respect. It's like everything in it there's nothing entirely shocking or surprising in it, but everything is just executed so well in this movie that it just comes together.
Yeah, I think it's really well done. I love the way that that he's given this technique because he has the character
Yeah.
to use it, and the way something about the way that the instructor tests him just worked for me.
Yeah, the test. One of the things that's smart about this movie is that it's logical. It follows like a chain of reasoning that all holds together.
Mhm.
I tested you by humiliating you for a year, so that I knew for a fact that you had the kind of self-discipline that would allow you to use this technique only when necessary. And then he demonstrates that later on.
Yeah,
Great,
yeah.
it's simple, but it's clean and clear and makes sense. A lot of movies now, I think I've gotten kind of bored with movies nowadays because they want to be so clever and they keep twisting and untwisting and retwisting. I watched Glass Onion recently, in case you couldn't tell, and I did like Glass Onion. It's not bad. It's a little modern. It's a Rian Johnson film, but it's Rian Johnson doing something that's in his wheelhouse.
I like Looper, so
Yeah, no, Looper's fine. And Glass Onion's like, it's not exactly a sequel, but it shares some characters with Knives Out, which was also pretty good.
Okay.
And it's a fun little romp. Kind of. because it does the Ryan Johnson thing where he like twists, then untwists, then retwists, then untwists, and it's like, okay, look, this isn't clever. You're just not giving us all of the information, and you kind of twisted yourself to the point where it doesn't make sense for anyone to act like this in any circumstance.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
These people are completely these people exist to serve your twists instead of the twists.
These characters are all very consistent. The guy who gets blinded has a fairly consistent drive through the whole movie, and they do a good job of making it subtle at first, so you don't realize it's going to manifest as a form of betrayal. You just think, he's an aggressive
like pettiness type. And jealousy.
As far as Lole's humility too, I mean, the only reason he wants to go and learn this, he's perfectly content to stay where he's living, marry the girl. He doesn't feel the need, but it's his master saying, look, we need to do this, because if you don't do this, these jerks are going to win and they're going to take over the Xiongnu. So it's like he's set up with very humble reasons for doing everything, even before he's tested by Master Sun. So it's everything is very consistent with the characters I found.
No, and I like the emphasis on humility, because that, like, I like, I know, Joel, you've done some traditional martial arts, and I have too, and like humility is often like one of the first things on the, like, you usually have like a list of commandments or precepts, and humility is usually on there towards the top.
Well, I mean, because especially considering like where it all came from, like you're giving someone a lot of power to use however they see fit. At the end of the day, you're giving someone a loaded weapon with a lot of martial arts, and so like the first thing you want to know about someone's character is, are they going to use this to do horrible things? So it's wise to test that. That's just good policy, man.
Well, and this movie's explicit about that, because this exists in a world where the martial actors are, if they win the tournament, they're, it's more than, it's not just a trophy. There's like a social element that's significant that flows from that, and whoever wins the tournament is going to have power, right? And so like that's the master's big fear at the beginning. He's like, if some jerk wins, he can go and bully the local population or whatever. So
and the school that they're rivals against are bullies. There's nothing complex about it. They use power poorly to get their way. That's it.
Yeah. And they're a little clever about it. Like the headmaster is good at sort of concealing his motivations when he's very I
love the scene where the guy shows up. He wins the strongman contest with the Mongolian. His hot-headed son goes and fights him, and they start to ruckus. And his dad comes in like, whoa, wait a minute. And just uses the soft approach. He's like, come on in, buddy, have a drink. You're our guest. And immediately that guy is his loyal minion for like almost the rest of the movie.
Yeah, this guy was about to get attacked by his son, and he completely turns it around. That's the sort of thing I had in mind. That's
great.
And just how suave he is about it. And also, I mean, Tian Fung, he's very good at playing these kinds of characters. He can play a wide range of characters, but I love when he's playing this type. And here it's, I don't know, he's just like a perfect villain for the movie. And it is, again, the Kung Fu movies, they're over the top, right? Like it's like the evil school and the good school. And the son what's the term for the face that must be punched, the face that needs to be punched? He's got that. That's something else that I like about these films is like the face casting they do. Like they just always get the right person.
They find the right face.
Yeah.
Well, this movie is exceptional with that. Talking about face that wants to be, he's like that little thing in his mouth. He's like, he's got that smug look on his face. And you're like, oh, I want to put a fist through your entire body.
Well, it was funny as I'm watching it, I'm thinking to myself, like, this guy's probably like the nicest guy in the world in real life. It's probably like the guy that's like playing the hero that's a jerk or something. Like you just never. But
no, it's true. I mean, that's the thing in acting. People talk about. It's like the people that play the best jerks are often the nicest people, because actual jerks don't get the things to do in a performance picture because they're oblivious to their jerkiness. So it's like actually that tends to be true.
Yeah, I often wonder about
actors, that. Because I know some actors. Most jerk actors, super sweet. Like just this kind, soft-spoken, conscientious, thoughtful people. And then you put them in front of like a stage or a camera and they're like, yeah, I ate that kitten. What of it?
Yeah, whereas the actual jerks that are people that are jerks in real life, they want their characters to be really likable, and they're because well, I don't want to do that because it'll
People might,
reveal what I'm
yeah,
really like.
yeah, I can see
But
that. I can,
but going back to the movie though, I think I like about this villain with the other school too is that, as you mentioned, he's really good at pulling these people in. He like pulls in the guy from the other school, he pulls in that thug to work for him. But because he's so disloyal and treacherous, it's like those are the people that destroy him. It's like he takes it for granted that he can manipulate people, but he has no, there's no loyalty behind that false facade of loyalty, and that's ultimately what destroys him.
Oh yeah, that's another good point of contrast too, a subtle one, because the true loyalty that's inspired by the other teacher is a lot deeper. That guy only has one Judas, and ultimately that Judas comes back to him and mutilates his enemy. So
yeah. Well, and the betrayal is interesting because the guy who betrays, it's like Adam was saying, like the Judas character himself gets betrayed by the evil schoolmaster, and so it's I was thinking about how shocking that scene is because I think they've already killed somebody by that point, right? Was the killing of the student before the blinding scene or after?
Yeah, the killing of the student is right after they introduce the Japanese assassins. So there's which is a turning point in the movie, but
I mean that's definitely like you're like, oh, the stakes have gone up. But what's weird is they kill somebody, but what really shows the level of stakes to me is the guy that's working with them from the inside gets blinded, and something about that seems particularly cruel to me. Do you know what I mean? It just seems like another
level. Is something really cruel about the way they're not like they're killing students, but they break the one guy's hands and they just leave him alive. Like they're like, nah, mutilate him, let him live with his shame and pain. And like whenever you see someone living after they've been kind of ruined as a martial artist, it's pretty heartbreaking. So since you see the ongoing effect of their cruelty, like the dead guy, okay, he's dead, but you don't see like his family grieving about him or anything. His troubles are over. Guy whose eyes are plucked out has to deal with that for the rest of the movie and the rest of his life. It's pretty miserable.
Well, and he's a character you're rooting against. That's what sort of surprises me about it is that they get me to feel something for this guy that I don't want to feel anything for because he's been betraying the school for a large part of the movie up until that point. And then I'm rooting for him when he's getting revenge. I'm like, this guy's despicable, but like something about the magic of him joining up with the singer lady and getting revenge in that moment, it's like, okay, they're bad, but like they're the right people for the job. Like this is definitely
yeah. You can read it too that he kind of learned his lesson. He understands the importance. It's like, oh, this is what happens when you just go along with the people and have no loyalty. It's like it comes back to haunt you. That's like
true. Yeah. And in fairness, the singer lady, she's not done anything wrong. She's been a good person the whole movie.
Yeah, that is an interesting thing with the love triangle element. It's like they don't put their thumb on the scales and go, okay, let's have a scene where she reveals herself to be a total jerk, so it becomes an easy choice for him at the end.
Because a legitimate choice between two fine, foxy ladies.
Well, because a lot of movies will make her like the evil seductress that's just like trying to get him at any cost.
But she seemed a genuinely nice person.
I mean, she nurses him back to health. She's willing to like build a life with him, even though he's like maimed both his hands and he can't fight anymore. So it's like you said, it presents a real choice for the main character, but it presents two real, like, I don't know, it's not like it is in a lot of movies, like I was saying, where there's an obvious choice and one that he's obviously not supposed to pick. And here you don't really know. Oh, I could see him, like, you could see another version of this movie where he picks the singer and he's like, well, I know that I grew up with this girl and all this, but this lady nursed me back to health. And we had this moment on the road after I saved her. So my heart belongs to her now or something, right? So
you totally could. You could even like further go and like have him have the trader guy do like a 180 and have this guy teach him Iron Palm and be like, you have to win the tournament now. Like this, there's lots of wonderful ways. Wouldn't it have been? And like, it would have been perfectly in line with this. A really great movie. Sometimes you just need a solid premise and to execute on that premise well. And that's what this movie is. It's a solid premise, it's well executed. And because because it's a solid premise and because you have competent actors and good direction and clever cinematography and efficient storytelling, like you could see all these other versions of it. It's great.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, to me, I agree. That's like the hallmark of a good movie, because the characters, again, they're fleshed out the way that characters are fleshed out in a martial arts movie. So it's, it's done in a different way, but they're fleshed out. You could see this movie going in different directions based on the information you've been given about the characters, and you could see it still being a good movie going in those directions. What do you guys think of the fighting, by the way? We haven't really talked about fighting.
Good fighting. Good fighting in this movie.
They knew not to overstay their welcome with the fighting too. Like they got that fighting was cool, but there's a certain length when it has gone on too long, and it's just throw a punch, you throw a punch. The longest scenes of like continual fighting was the tournament, and they managed to keep it snappy. They managed to do back and forths with it, interesting reversals of fortune. They managed to put in character moments. Yeah. So like they knew to keep the fight rich with more than just the business of throwing the punches, So really well constructed fights in this one.
I like the way the fights were edited too. I like that, like you'd see like a guy lunge in and then he's flying through the air and then he's laying, and that with the sound effect, it just all worked. Sometimes it doesn't work as well.
Sound was good in this movie.
Yeah, the sound of this is very excellent. I would agree. This is like a perfect sounding martial arts movie, in my opinion.
The punches land with a really good, solid impact. And like another great thing about the fights is that there's no two fights that are quite alike. Sometimes there's fights between equals. Sometimes it's not clear what the levels of power the different fighters are. Sometimes there's clever tricks that allow you to get a one-up on the fighter. Like whenever he's fighting the main goon, what was it, the big thug, Chin Lang. At one point he challenges him. It's kind of clear that the big thug's like out of his league, but he's been observing how he fights, and he's like, he always leads with his forehead. The top of his head's a weak point, so he bops him on the top of the head, disorients him, and wins the fight and humiliates the guy. And that's really great. Because like there's no two fights that are quite the same. There's some that are savage beatdowns. There's actually two that are pretty savage beatdowns. These are a little bit samey. The first one is when he gets his hands wrecked, because at first he's like holding his own against this army of dudes, but eventually the numbers just
that's a good fight though because of that, because he's winning initially.
Yep.
And it's a super lethal fight. Knives are involved.
And stakes are high.
Yeah. I think one of the main bad guys gets killed in that scene, and it's almost like not even addressed after the.
It's like, he died. It was a high stakes fight.
There's good acting within the fights too, which is part of it. Like going back to the very first scene, like when the old master gets ambushed by all those guys. Well, you talk about the knives. When the knives come out, you just see this look on his face, and he's like, "Oh, okay, this is." you can read it.
This is one of those fights, huh?
Yeah, rather than just throwing knives out, going, it's going to make it scary. The actor conveys it in a way that makes you feel it more, and you're like, because at that point in the movie, you're like, is this guy just going to get killed, and that's what's going to set things off?
Yeah, you don't know.
They're like physical performances that are almost more like stage acting or silent movies, the way that they do them. And I like that, because like the scene where the guy gets blinded, it's almost like it's like out of a silent movie where he's like twirling around, like, oh God, there's just like a melodrama to the aftermath that's very effective. And the same with it, because I noticed it not in that scene that you're talking about, Adam, but the scene in the tournament, I was noticing that the ref was using his eyes to emphasize certain points. And I was just like, those eye performances are very compelling to me. So yeah, I don't know. I think the physicality of the performances overall, almost to an exaggerated degree, is what makes it really work for me.
They know how to exaggerate enough. I think it never goes clown shoes. I don't think it does get a little close to goofy territory, but I've seen wuxia films where it kind of goes full goofy. They don't know when to stop the overemphasis. This one is restrained enough that like you get the best of both worlds. You get enough that it's emphasized, but not so much that it's a circus. So
I have to admit, I kind of like the overindulgence in the. Like some of those 90s movies get into that territory. I'm a fan, but when it's done, when it's intentional, I think I think that's
Yeah, it's a matter of consistency of tone through the movie too. I mean, if you've been fairly grounded and then it goes really over the
Yeah,
top, it can look weird. I mean, it just depends where is the movie aiming, I think, a
yeah,
lot of times.
yeah. Well, a lot of these '70s Shaw Brothers movies do have a very consistent tone. They're very good at
Hmm.
sort of keeping a tone throughout the film. And when they do get Gonzo, it's done in a way that's like darkly humorous more than just
Yeah.
straight up comedy usually.
Yeah, there
Um,
is a little bit of an element of the comedy, a little bit of element of comedy to the guy poking out the eyes of the guy that poked his eyes out. Um, it's a little bit goofy, but like it's grim because his eyes just got tore out. So, yeah,
yeah, and the way that scene is shot is just
really,
beautiful. I love like the woman just saying like forward to your right, forward to she's giving
that
him
was
all these
Yeah.
instructions. It's I was like, oh man, I want to watch these two characters go off and do things now. We
That's
don't get
that's
that because they
they
die.
yeah.
unfortunately
Yeah.
meet their
Uh,
fates there.
Well, that's like I was gonna say. I feel this is one of those movies where you could watch other characters and have an entertaining movie. I mean, like, Chen Lang. It's like, oh, the big thug guy. It's like, yeah, it'd be fun seeing a movie with him as one of the main characters.
Yeah, I agree. He's the one that fought Bolo at the beginning? Is that
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, what's good about him is he he's got this look where he can be the bad guy, but there's like a kindness in his eyes that pays
Yeah.
dividends when he's like, "Oh, I've seen the error of my ways, and I'm not going to work with these guys anymore." And I definitely would have an alternate version. He doesn't get beheaded by the judo instructor. Uh,
And
he goes
that's
off on his own adventures or something.
Yeah, and that's another way where, as you say, there's consistency. It's like he doesn't get lured into the bad guy camps like we're bad guys, we're gonna do bad things. It's because the master comes down, it's like, oh, don't mind my son, and wines and dines him and is very friendly to him. So it's not like he was brought into the evil school to we're
Yeah.
the evil school. He just kind of got
Well,
pulled in. I mean,
and the turning point for him is
pretty
the eye
violent
plucking.
thug.
The eye plucking.
Yeah.
scene
Yes.
turn.
Yes.
You can see it in his
Exactly.
face.
Well, and
Um,
even from a selfish perspective too, it's just like, oh, okay, this is how they treat people they just bring in that aren't part of the family. Okay, I should remember that.
yeah, it's I don't know, and also the body count of this movie. This is like a very
Yeah.
deadly just for the kind of movie it is. Like obviously there are martial arts movies where more people die, but so many of the named characters are killed by the end of the film, and they're dispatched so mercilessly. Do you know what I mean? They're not given like an extended death scene. It's just a swift blow to the head and they're gone. I find when movies do that, I don't know, I kind of like carnage-ridden movies where characters that you've grown attached to are murdered. It makes the final battles a little bit more moving, and you don't know what to expect. You wonder, oh, could the hero also perish if all of these other characters are being dropped like flies?
Yeah, there's a real. This movie's good at not allowing you to predict it in that way. You don't know who's safe and who's toast. I think there's enough foreshadowing you can kind of see it, especially with the guy who gets his eyes plucked out. I think there's an element of the doomed that kind of hangs around him after that. But I mean, like, same thing with his first master. Like, ever since it was revealed in the very opening fight that guy is kind of like he's losing his edge, he's getting cut against the bladed weapons, and he's like, well, I should send you somewhere to a competent master so they can teach you the right way. Like, you get this feeling where it's like, ooh, this guy's an emotional liability. He's gonna die, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yep. But like some of them, like the first student that gets killed was kind of shocking to me. I was just like, wow, they really just dispatched that guy, didn't they?
And then they just drag him there and throw him in, and
Throw him in and like dispose of your student, and they leave. Like, Jesus, this got grim.
Yeah.
But it's I think it's not patty cake is what I like. You know what I mean? I don't like when the characters are all acting as if it's a life and death struggle, but there is actually no death in the movie. This one from the very beginning, oh, okay, these guys mean business, and as we see, both masters are killed. Both of the good masters are killed, the pretty much everybody except for his best friend that has a name in the movie and Ying Ying are killed. There's not many people left by the end of the movie.
Yeah, everyone dies. Jesus, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I mean, there are students who don't die, but nobody that's given a name really, except again, his friend that went to school with him with the old master. That's the only. I think he's the only other one who really survives, right?
Yeah, I think so. Wow, that is a big body count, actually. Because a lot of people die in like the last 10 minutes of this movie, and they die so rapidly and so savagely that you're like, wait a minute, that's the whole cast.
Yeah, I mean, when the singer dies, she just gets like a chop to the forehead. Yep. And it's just like, and it's like a groove in her skull when she turns around. I by the way, I love those effects when the character's back is to the screen and somebody slices them and then they spin around and you see the wound on their face.
Yeah, it's always great.
But yeah, again, you know how they do it, but I just always find it works for me.
It doesn't have to be complicated to be good. It's a mistake a lot of modern filmmakers are making, where it's like, complicated. No, dude, simple pleasures.
Stop being clever.
Well, what works about it is how dramatic the person who's dying can be in that. They get to do like something about spinning to the camera. You got this, and it's like the act of the spin helps to create the illusion of the blade slicing. You know what I mean? It creates the movement.
Yeah,
I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, there's just something that just works about it. There's certain things that just work in these movies, and that's one of those moves that you see it. It's like, yep, that works.
Well, you can kind of see a blade twirling you around if you got hit with it, Like there's certain kinetic energy that kind of brings you around. And like continuing that kinetic arc, like that, it's something that the actor has control of. And you're right, it kind of rings true when you're looking at it. It works visually.
Yeah. Yeah, I just always love that. It's just all the little, just the little ways that they get wounds onto people on camera. I just love. It's just, the blood splatter when people get stabbed. They're just very effective. But yeah, so I don't know. Any other thoughts before we head out on this one, or have we covered all of the details here?
Oh man. I think we've pretty much got all of it. Like that's the movie. Highly recommend this one. Yeah. Like if you watch one wuxia film, well, probably come drink with me. But if you watch a second one, it's gonna be this one. King Boxer, aka what was it, Five Fingers of Death or whatever.
Yeah, this is an essential. It really is. It's something that if you're a fan, you just need to see it. And even if you're not a huge fan, it's a good one to watch if you aren't a big fan, because it is just such an accessible, good dose of what it's like if you just want to get a taste.
Yeah, I would definitely.
Yeah, you can see DNA from Star Wars in this. You can see DNA from Kill Bill. Like, you should watch this just because it's part of the part of the RNA of all pop culture now.
Yeah, definitely. If you watch Kill Bill and you want to follow the reference trail, this is one of the movies that you would certainly want to see. For sure. But I recommend it. Again, I think it's just a solid classic kung fu movie. There's a reason why I think it got everything rolling. Again, you do have to look at it in the context of its time, because there are movies that came later that might have developed on top of what this was doing, and so people's expectations may not be the same. If you just saw Ip Man and you're going to go straight into this movie, just be prepared for that. There's a 3-decade. I'm probably not even doing the math right, but you know what I mean. There's
this was like early 70s. When was Ip Man?
Yeah, 72. This was 72. So I mean, it's about 18, 19. Oh, geez, 40-year difference between Ip Man and this. So, I just be prepared for that, because again, I recommend these movies to people a lot, and one of the complaints I often get is the pacing or the sounds. People don't like sound stages. That's jarring to them if they're not accustomed to sound stages in a movie. And definitely the editing. The editing is obviously going to look different, though. I think this is pretty sharply edited.
I was going to say, I don't think pacing would be an issue in this one. I think this movie is really well paced by any standard. But I mean, it is something to think about with some of these movies. But I don't know.
If you're accustomed to endless explosions at the end of a movie, this might be.
Honestly, no. I feel the opposite. I feel like I feel like if you watch your average Marvel movie, every fight scene is going to be 10 minutes longer than the fight scene should have been. And it's like, I find like a lot of modern movies are like, oh, it's a big action scene. It's like, it's got to keep going and going and going. Whereas in this movie, every action scene is exactly as long as it needs to be. Because I get so bored during so many modern action movies.
You know what's refreshing too? Like, because again, I agree with you. I there's some that I like. Like I liked the John Wick movies. I thought that those.
Yeah, I'm not. But
but a lot of them, I have the same reaction. And what I think people who maybe if they haven't explored these earlier films, like whether it's this movie or like gritty, dirty, hairy movies from the 70s or even like 80s action movies or whatever, there's something different when you're planning out action with live human beings and choreographing it. It just feels more, even if it doesn't look as real because you're not using the same scene, it just feels more real. Like there's even something as simple as like a single pop of a gun at somebody in a long standoff, to me feels way more tense and realistic than something where I know they're just constantly using CGI and
I watched Smokey and the Bandit with my brother-in-law last week, which I hadn't seen since the 80s. And it's like, it's such a good movie. I loved it as a kid. I hadn't seen it since then. And I'm like, but yeah, it's all cars and people in cars and people driving. And it's like, there's no fancy special effects. And it just feels great, as opposed to now it'd be a CGI car flipping 300 feet into the air, and it's just like this is a cartoon.
Or like the French Connection, where like they're like going, they're doing stuff they're not even legally supposed to be doing with car, and and like those the Jackie Chan movies from the 80s and 90s where people are legitimately getting hurt performing these stunts. I think it
we want blood.
Well, no, it's just that there's value in going back to this stuff. Like when I tell people about old Shaw Brothers movies, one of the things I say to them is look at the feet, because in a lot of movies now they don't show you the person's whole body because they want to disguise the physical movements of what the person is doing to show you they're not as impressive as they look on camera because they're not showing you the person's whole body. If you see like a wide shot of martial artists in 70s movies, it might look a little stiff and goofy at first to you, but once you realize, no, this person is doing all of these movements, good and bad, it really elevates your appreciation, I think, of what they're achieving. And when you see somebody who's truly great, like the Venom mob, then you're truly astounded. Do you know what I mean? So if you watch Shaw Brothers movies from like 1965 to like the late 70s, and you get that full experience of the evolution of the films over time, by the time you get to that level of physical performance, it's like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. So I think again, I think it's always an ask when you want people to watch these earlier movies, but this one is one that's worth checking out.
I
think what's it like $2.99 on Amazon? Is that?
Yeah, man, come buy it. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, I was going to rent it. It was like $2 to buy it. I was like, oh,
same. It's in my library forever now because it was like $1.
Well, and I have it on DVD.
Yeah, you can just buy that whole. Is it part of that the Shawscope box set too, which is just a fantastic collection of movies too. Yeah, so if you want to buy it as physical media, now is the time to do it.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing is I have a pretty good physical media collection, and one of the benefits of that is it doesn't ever get taken down from a streaming service. You never lose your password. It's always there. Yeah, the edits are a thing that often annoy me. They'll change things. You'll go back. Even sometimes you'll go back and you'll watch a movie, and it'll be something subtle, like they put up different dubs than you had up before. And it's like you bought this thing, but you didn't ask them to make that change. So it's very annoying.
I bought the Hobbit cartoon to like watch with my nephews when they were little on Amazon, and it was crazy. I bought it the worst time because I bought it and I like watched it by myself, and I'm like, oh, this is good. It's great. And then it's made for TV, and then I watched it with my nephews the next day. And halfway through the movie, they changed the movie, and suddenly they letterboxed it and cut the top and bottom off the,
Oh
so
my
they
God.
that fake letterbox. So it's like all of a sudden you're just missing half the picture because it fits perfectly on the screen now, but you're like everything. That's the composition of every shot was wrong, and I was just like, you ruined this thing I already bought.
It's very frustrating. That's the benefit of physical media.
Anyway, I got to get going.
All right. So we will get going, and we will talk to everyone next time.
All right.